How's it going, Tri Creek? This is a quick makeup lesson for the start of our classroom management series. The next two lessons that we have are going to be over classroom management in a one-to-one setting. We're going to make sure that this first lesson that we talk about some thoughts and some ideals, and then we will move on in the next lesson and actually practice these. This will be a makeup for anybody that missed our class last week. So the first thing that I'm going to ask is, what do we do when every student has one of these? And a lot of teachers through our lessons and classes brought up how to manage our students' off-task behavior. How do we keep them on task? How do we keep them from going to websites that we don't want them going to or not paying attention in class? So when we have those discussions, I always pose the question, what did we do before students had one of those? So if we're talking about that off-task behavior, what did off-task behavior look like before? I always go back to the day where Bart Simpson has told us for 20 plus years what off-task behavior was at the beginning of class. Doodling in class, passing notes. I was really good at this in high school, flipping pencils up in the ceiling, doing a Sudoku or a crossword. Those are all off-task behaviors that students do in our classroom. And what are the reasons that they do? And maybe to answer that, we should ask this question. What does teacher off-task behavior look like? So not necessarily in the classroom, but when we are at a work session or we're at an in-service, what is teacher off-task behavior? And it's interesting because every time I ask this question, a bunch of teachers always laugh. And as teachers ourselves, sometimes we find that we break all the rules that we expect our students to follow. For instance, teacher off-task behavior at in-service, we've possibly heard Angry Birds. I've definitely heard Words with Friends go off at in-services. Or seen Draw Something. How about at the faculty meeting where the teacher's grading papers? Some of us might consider this multitasking, while others of us, more than likely and more than not, are disengaged. We don't find the content relevant to us. We can't find a way to apply in our classroom, so we check out. So if those are reasons that as adults we have off-task behavior, it would be a little crass of us to think that students don't have the same thoughts if we cannot make things relevant to them in their life. So here are 4 areas of classroom management: instructional design, teacher watchfulness, student relevance, and student responsibility. These are 4 quality areas of classroom management that, with or without technology, need to be addressed. And we're going to talk about these as we move into a one-to-one environment next year. So our instructional design. We want to be able to have that constructivist attitude in our classroom. We want our students to be able to go out and get their own knowledge, and we want our students to be able to create. It's an important part of any successful one-to-one launch. If all we do, and you've heard me say it once and you'll hear me say it 20 times, if all we do is put worksheets online, we're spending an awful lot of money that we could be using for paper and pencil. Differentiation, again, is something that's going to be important. When we think about rigor in our classroom, we need to make sure that rigor meets the level of our students. You know, I use the example, we could give a 6th grader an AP class, but more than likely, that's not going to be appropriate for that 6th grader. It would meet the definition of rigor in terms of it would be very difficult and very challenging, but it wouldn't be at that student's level. And when we differentiate in our own class, this is going to be able to allow us to send out assignments in tiered groups, that way that we can meet each student's level of rigor that they need. Also, we want to make sure that our students are collaborating in their work throughout the process. Our teacher watchfulness. As we start empowering our students to become self-learners, we're still in charge of making sure that they learn that material, whether we are directly instructing it or empowering them to go be self-learners. We still have to progress monitor along the way. We still have to give those formative assessments to make sure that they have the knowledge that they need to know. And if they don't, we have to fill in those gaps. From a management in the classroom standpoint, we'll talk about proximity. And every teacher knows that the closer you are to a student in your classroom, the less likely they're going to be exhibiting those off-task behaviors. So you always tend to move yourself towards the problem student in your class, or the student that sometimes acts out. So proximity is a definite change. Time at the front, you know, that's not going to change in our classroom as our students are empowering themselves to learn. We're not going to be just standing at the front delivering a lecture all the time. We're going to be moving about the class. Also, your seating arrangement in your class is going to change day to day depending upon what you need for that class. And in collaborative environments, it changes all the time. So we have to be flexible and we have to be mobile with our seating arrangements. We also have to have student relevance in our class. It's important for our kids to be engaged, but we can be engaged at very low levels. We can be having fun but not learning. It's important for us when it comes to engagement that we have a level of rigor that our students can handle. We can't give them something that's impossible. But again, think about in your classroom, you probably have 3, 4, maybe 5 different levels of students in that class. And if your assignment only reaches the level of rigor for one of those groups, we're missing 4 other groups in our class. So we have to make sure that we have multiple tiered assignments. You think about the universal design for learning and the multiple different types of ways that they assess. It's important for us to give rigor to the student's level. We also have to expect appropriate use, and this isn't going to happen overnight. I wish I could tell you that we are going to launch one-to-one and every student's going to do this appropriately 100% of the time. But we have to continue to model appropriate use. We have to continue to talk about it and move forward. Choice is something that's also important. We have to give our students choice and maybe the different types of things that are assessed along the way. Student responsibility, another huge piece to our one-to-one being successful. As teachers, we have to model appropriate behavior with technology. This can't be something where you do your instruction in class, you give your students free work, and then you just go and sit at your computer the whole time. We need to be moving around working with groups. At the same point also, you can't send your groups off to do work and then go do the things that you don't want your student to do. I know it goes without saying that we shouldn't be surfing Facebook and doing personal things during the classroom setting while our students are expected to do work and then expect them to be on task the whole time. The answer is never going to work because I'm a teacher. Well, I get to do this just because I'm a teacher. Well, that's not how kids respond to things, and that's not how we want to do things. We want to model appropriate behavior with this technology. We also have to realize that students must be taught and trained. It's important to realize that there's no such thing as a digital native or a digital immigrant. Just because these kids grow up with technology does not mean that they're great with it. So we have to make sure that our students are taught and trained on how to do. We can't just expect them overnight to be able to make an iMovie or create an engaging keynote. Those aren't things that just magically happen because we put technology in front of them. Have to be taught and trained. We also have to expect appropriate behavior. But then another thing we have to do is we have to teach about self-regulation and time management. Back when I was in the classroom and we had computer labs, every time that we would go in there and we'd start a lesson, and before my students would even log on to Moodle, they would check their Harmony every single time. And Harmony, if you're watching this outside of Tri Creek, is our student information system. They would check their grades right off the bat as I'm trying to teach. So we have to talk about when is an appropriate time to check your Harmony. Is it during instruction? Is it during conversation? Or is it during free time in class? You have to talk about what those expectations of that behavior are. Some things to think about. Technology is a tool. I've said it and I'll say it again. It's a tool in your classroom, and your curriculum is what drives your technology. Make sure that you are a model for students as a teacher. And the last thing that I'm going to speak to is take some time with technology. Don't just create a project and then throw it at students. The same manner that when you get a new curriculum and a new book, you're going to actually read through chapter 1 before you assign chapter 1. It's important that you go through the project and actually create a quality example for your students to see. It's going to do 2 things. Give your students a quality example. And the second thing is it's going to let you see where your students are going to run into roadblocks along the way so you can be prepared to help them along the way. A few things to think about heading into our next lesson. These are some computer positions we're going to talk about. 45ing your computer means that you're going to close your computer lid to a 45-degree angle so you can't see the screen, but it's not powered down and it's not shut all the way. Lids down means to exactly what you think it is. Shut your computer lid. The last thing that I'll leave you with there is if I close your computer, I open it. So as a school corporation, I think this will be a good thing for us to adopt. That if I walk around as a teacher and I shut your computer lid, that means that it doesn't come back open until I open the screen for you. That way, if you're giving a lecture, you're doing some direct instruction, you're not going to break the flow. You'll just walk by, shut the lid, and then you can address it when the students have some free work time. You can address the situation at that point so it doesn't mess up the flow of your class. Last thing I'll leave you with is MBWA, management by walking around. Very important. I think it's something that we all know, we all strive for. but it's very important in our class. Thanks a lot. For those of you that are making up a lesson, make sure you head over to Edmodo and take the quick quiz, and we will see you all very soon. Have a great day.